man himself. It's Director of Recruiting Steve Wiltfong. I got a little smile out of you, so I feel pretty successful today. Montgomery already being targeted by the likes of Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State, and some other top programs. But what did he tell you about his visit to East Lansing?
Well, he said Michigan State's very high on his list. They've done an amazing job with his recruitment, and he's looking forward to where things stand in the next couple months. But, Coach Johnson's been all over him, and Coach Tucker's impressed him. And it was another really good visit for him. He's got over 20 offers. I'd venture to say that Michigan State's near the top of his list. He was recently back at Michigan. He's going back to Kentucky on March 30th. Clemson's a program we know they haven't offered anybody in 2025 yet. But he's been there several times, and I know that's a program he's extremely high on. If Clemson offers him a scholarship, they could be tough to beat. He's got South Carolina on April 2nd, Georgia on April 4th, down to Florida on April 6th. He's going to be at Ohio State to watch their spring game on April 15th. His brother, Luke Montgomery, is a true freshman that'll be playing in the spring game as an early enrollee.
We mentioned Josiah Thompson, the premier offensive tackle in the 2024 class, up in the headlines to open the show. And Steve, you put in a crystal ball for South Carolina back in February. Are you still feeling the Gamecocks, and what's the latest heading into his announcement?
No, absolutely. He had another fantastic visit to campus there in January. No program has recruited him harder than South Carolina. And I think the Gamecocks are tracking for one of the best offensive line classes in the country. They already have Cam Pringle in the fold. He's the number 3 offensive tackle in the land per the 24/7 Sports Composite. Josiah Thompson's a guy that I've had several offensive line coaches on the next level tell me he's the best player or the best prospect at the position in the country. So that would be a massive pickup. And then I still like where South Carolina stands with Greenville High offensive tackle Blake Franks. So if they can add Thompson and Franks to Pringle, the Gamecocks are going to sign one of the best offensive line classes in the country. And if you've been paying attention over the last 2 cycles, they've been recruiting well around the point of attack. This is another class that they would be building on that.
So we're actually going to talk more extensively about Nebraska a little bit later in the show. But while I've got you, Steve, I mean, a ton of prospects are headed to Lincoln this weekend, and none bigger than Dylan Raiola. What do we need to know about his upcoming plans?
Well, it's a return trip to Nebraska. Last time he was at Nebraska was in February. He went there with his dad and his brother to spend some time with his uncle, who's the offensive line coach at Nebraska. He was able to attend a basketball game where he was serenaded by the student section and fans that were in Lincoln. He knows how important he is to that community, and from Matt Rule on down to all the Nebraska fans, they're coming hard for Dylan Raiola. But on this visit, he's actually going to get a chance to sit down with Matt Rule, sit down with Coach Satterfield in person. Those guys went out and saw him at his school. But again, NCAA rules weren't allowed to let them have that face-to-face interaction. They've been talking and FaceTiming and Skyping and all that. But here they are. They'll be in the same room together, being able to talk the trajectory of Nebraska football. And the other thing, I've talked to the Raiola family, and look, he's considering Georgia, he's considering USC, he's considering Oregon as well. But they've talked about, look, when you look at some of these quarterbacks that are the top at the position in the NFL, they didn't go to the blue blood schools. I know Nebraska's a blue blood, so I apologize for using that word. They didn't go to the schools that are at the top of college football right now. So they see a path to the first round, whether it's Nebraska or anywhere else. But I do think that Georgia grabbed the momentum at his last visit this past weekend. It was the 6th time on campus, and his dad told me it never fails to deliver. They took in meetings. They took in Georgia's first padded practice, and everything about it is elite, and they called Coach Smart the best in the business. I like where Georgia stands right now. I think 2 visits to USC this calendar year have also put them in the thick of it. No question, Nebraska's special to this family. They're excited to get back, so we'll see what this big Junior Day visit does starting on Friday.
And Steve, it's not just going to be Raiola in Lincoln this weekend. Quite a few blue chippers are expected to make it to campus. Who else do you have your eyes on in terms of that loaded Nebraska visitor list?
Well, one guy that I think that Nebraska's got a really good shot at that's going to be there this weekend is Burley, Idaho senior high speedster Gatlin Blair, our colleague Brandon Huffman, first in the industry to be super high on him. Probably the fastest player in this entire recruiting class. He put out a top 11 in December. I think Nebraska's in the thick of the top 5 there. Nate Frazier's a running back from California that's coming in. Andrew Sprague's a top 247 offensive lineman that'll be on campus. Carter Nelson's the #1 player in the state, top 247 tight end there. Grant Bricks is a top 247 offensive tackle from Iowa that's had this visit on the radar for a while. Thomas Heiberger is a linebacker from South Dakota that's going to be to campus. And they got a few more 5-stars, Blair. You got Williams Nwaneri, #1 defensive lineman in the country from Missouri. Ryan Wingo, who was recently promoted to the #6 player in the country in our most recently updated top 247 player rankings. And then Brandon Baker, the #1 offensive tackle in the land. Those are guys that I think Nebraska's just looking to impress this weekend and then get them back again once they start falling in love during this junior day experience.
Right, we mentioned at the top of the show, it's been a great couple of days for Michigan, landing a pair of Ohio prospects. What drew both Jordan Marshall and Ben Roebuck to Ann Arbor?
Well, Jordan Marshall is arguably the top running back in the Midwest, rushed for nearly 2,000 yards. He's also a young man that can catch the ball out of the backfield and comes from one of the best programs in Ohio, as does Ben Roebuck, who also committed to them this weekend. It's a pivotal year for Michigan on the offensive line this class. They could lose up to 5 guys. They're tracking for a 3rd straight Joe Moore Award, but they're going to need to have the cavalry come in and help. And Michigan landing Ben Roebuck, who was one of their top targets in the Midwest, 6'7", 300 plus with a humongous wingspan and big hands, a physical football player. Then you put Jordan Marshall in behind him, a guy that is one of the more dynamic running backs in this class. Those are 2 big pickups for Michigan as they have the #3 class in the country and trending for a lot more.
Steve, let's finish off with the 2025 class. David Sanders, the 5-star offensive tackle. He will be at Georgia this weekend for a big unofficial visit. What's the latest with the Bulldogs and David Sanders and then the rest of his recruitment?
Well, David Sanders, he's been since he got a chance to visit there last fall. That was a program that really resonated for him. The experience at Georgia, the fan base, the excitement around the program, certainly the pedigree, their development at the position. When I asked David Sanders when 24/7 Sports crowned him the first 5-star in this 2025 class, I said, which game day visit blew him away the most? And he said it was the one at Georgia. He just talked about how it was electrifying. He was there for the win over Tennessee. And he said that Georgia, the staff, they treated him like family as soon as he got there. The whole vibe, the way the guys played, the way they play with passion, the energy around the program, the atmosphere, it all stood out to him. And I know he's really looking forward to getting back there. As you know, Kirby Smart flew the Kirby copter out to see him just a couple days after winning his 2nd straight national championship. Coaches were on the road. He helicoptered over to Providence Day there in Charlotte, as David Sanders was one of the first prospects he saw. They're still recruiting 2024, but to prioritize the 2025 like that shows you how important of a target he is for them. But that's not the only program he's looking at. You know, he's got a lot of programs on his list early: Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Ohio State, Notre Dame just offered, Michigan. So he's one of the most well-rounded kids in the country, in addition to being a great football player. He's like a 4.0 student, 4-sport athlete. He's got a lot going on. And as his coach, Chad Greer, will tell you, he always has a smile on his face.
Love to hear that. Steve, thank you so much.